So this is our P2 workshop from Ben, the Bermuda Education Network, and this is a cross-curricular approach. So we're combining all sorts of different things across the curriculum for P2. We just checked. Oh, thanks, Steph. So I'm Kelly Rade. I was in the government system for 10 years. I taught at St. George's Prep. Before that, I was at Mount St. Agnes, and now I'm currently at Summersfield Academy teaching lower primary. So it's a Montessori school. So I've got P2s, P3s, and P4s. Our other Ben teacher representative, Tiffany Bean, helped create these lessons, but she couldn't make it tonight or this afternoon. And I also am the director of Horizon Summer Learning Program. So that's a summer program we do. We did it last year, and we help students who are approaching grade level get extra support. And we offered a 3-week free camp for those students where they had lots and lots of intervention. And we have amazing interns for students who are in college wanting to become teachers. They helped us out with that, and it was a fantastic experience. So we're going to be linking science and language arts and social studies and technology and math all into this workshop today. And we know the research behind this promotes that once we have our brain firing on all those subjects at once, it makes stronger connections, and it really helps kids get a deeper understanding of their topics. Okay, so we're excited to infuse all of those things into the literary aspect of Stone Soup today. So these are all the new standards from the curriculum Cambridge that have been updated for this September. So you'll see there's a bunch from language arts and science and math and social studies. I didn't put the technology in this one because you'll see I've created a Bitmoji classroom, so it doesn't necessarily have specific technology standards, but you'll be using technology as well. All right, and we are welcomed by our partner today in the Agri-Living Institute. So Chris Ferrer is going to be leading the expeditions. So your fabulous field trips will be with him at the Agri-Living Institute. Thanks for coming, Chris. Would you like to describe your lessons?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Kelly and everybody. I am going to be joined by my dear friend and colleague, Christina Collis, who's not here right now because she's busy teaching in our after-school program at the Garden. So it will be her and I that are leading the expeditions, and we are prepared for as many children as you throw at us. But our objectives are here. I mean, for us, any children that come to the Garden, it's really important for them to have kinetic, tactile connection with the garden. So that means doing things with their hands, touching plants, and things like that. I'm not going to go too deep into the objectives because you can read it there. We have a unique opportunity to connect for the children. What does it mean to be eco-conscious, environmentally friendly? How does that connect with growing food, gardening, farming? That's our wheelhouse, and that's what I love to talk about. So with the children, we are going to have a discussion. Icebreaker would be talking to the children about their cooking experience at home. And I believe, Kelly, that you do have a cooking exercise for the teachers to be doing with the students as well. So more cooking, the better. Cooking is a great way to connect with vegetables, ingredients. Where do they come from? What's the parts of the plants are things that we're going to be doing with the children. So the icebreaker is getting the children to talk about their favorite recipe and talk about their cooking experience at home. And then discussing about, so our impact as humans on the planet, which, I mean, you could talk forever about that, but we want to keep it very simple for the children. And this discussion is going to be between, Christine and I are going to be leading it, and we want it to be as engaging as possible with the children. So if any P2 teachers out there with lots of P2 teaching experience have any ideas on how we can make this more fun, or if there's like supplements or images that we can do that go along with these ideas, we would definitely be welcoming of those. But just to get the children thinking that, whether it's a potato that we're going to be putting in our soup, or whether, the clothes that we wear, the phones that we all connected to, all that stuff is a resource from the planet, and whether it's renewable or not are things to think about as well. So that's sort of the discussion to get all of us, the students, thinking about the the learning outcomes that we want to hit in the activities, which is on the next slide. If we can go to that one, please. Cool. So it's not split up here in this slide, but Christina will be leading one group of students through a garden tour, essentially, where we will be foraging and identifying, we're calling it natural resources, but obviously plants. So identifying medicinal plants that are growing in the garden, and collecting cuttings of them with the children, with the aim of, at the end of the tour, getting them to look at the leaves again, seeing if they remember the names, getting them to use adjectives to describe the leaves, whether it's fuzzy or round or soft or, you know, those words. And then, yes, also identifying for the children wild plants. We call them weeds sometimes, but wild plants that grow around us, that actually are beneficial for us. We have a lot of wild greens that grow around our garden that we would like the children to get to know and to meet, as well as ones that are poisonous / harmful. So those are vocabulary words that we want the children to be using as well. We do have images that we're going to have laminated for the children to look at as well, but really getting them to literally meet the plant in the garden is an important part for us. And Christina, in this garden tour, will also be, we'll be using a diagram probably at the beginning to get the children to start to use the words of what are the plant parts. So then when we go in the tour, we can be able to use those words to identify the plants. I will have a unique challenge in getting the children to cook stone soup all together. I am going to go get some polished stones from Aberfeldy and make sure that they're nice and clean so we can put them in the soup. So it's just like the soup in the book. But we are going to be using locally grown vegetables in the recipe. So I did send it to Kelly. It's a very, very simple recipe, just with some local vegetables, either sweet and or Irish potatoes, carrots, onions, garlic, some lentils, and some West Indian thyme, which is locally grown as well. So ingredients for the children to connect with, what part of the plant is this vegetable come from, and kale as well. So there's a leaf vegetable. And then a big part with learning outcomes, I think it's with math, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Kelly, where the kids would weigh it. We have digital, so we're going to have 2 different kitchen stations. So if teachers are prepared to help us with one of the kitchen stations where the children would prepare, chop, and weigh the ingredients, and then everybody's putting them in the pot together. So that's a big thing for us, is getting them to prepare the ingredients and then weighing them on the scale, whether it's 8 ounces, 10 ounces that we need for the recipe as well, and cooking that together. It's gonna be like a cooking show. So I already have a batch of the soup already prepared. So we're not having to wait for it to be prepared, because the fun part would be to get to enjoy the soup all together in a group, so that, there's this circular connection that's happening. We've connecting with the plants, we're seeing how they're growing, we've prepare them, we put them in a pot, we've cooked them, and now we get to enjoy them together. So all this connections are being made, and part of my activity is taking the kitchen scraps that we're going to be creating through the cooking activity, and then showing them how we make compost, and kitchen scraps being one of those ingredients for the compost. And that's a really important connection for us, to show the children how we are able to give back to the soil and to the earth that is giving us these nutrients, calories, minerals, everything that we get from the food. Really need to instill early on that, it can't be a solely extractive, that we have to be giving back to the soil in order to continue to get healthy food, is an important part of us. And if we do have extra time, which I don't see there being extra time, we do have activities to sow seeds and also transplant seedlings in the garden if we need more things to do. But I think that this is going to be a lot to do in an hour and a half. But we are well and more than ready to host you guys and your classes, students in our garden. Closing circle, yeah, ways for us to care for the environment. So, through the hour and a half, it'd be good to see for the children to make those connections as to, me growing my own food, or my family growing my own food, or my school growing our own food locally is a great way for us to care for the environment. Obviously, planting trees, which is not something that we're going to be doing, but is a gardening activity that's very beneficial. And obviously, I wouldn't go into detail about this with P2s, but us making sure that we're not putting our kitchen scraps in the trash, does mitigate methane emissions into the atmosphere, which is a stronger greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. That's way down the rabbit hole. But yeah, that's the activities that we have for the garden. And I mean, I would welcome any questions or comments or ideas that teachers have as to how we could make it better, or quite, put it out there. Thank you for your time.
Does anyone have any questions for Chris? Well, I was just going to say, I did a field trip last year through Ben when we did a different book for P3, and we went to their gardens, and it was phenomenal. My son was actually in my class, and whenever we have carrots now, like if there's a big carrot, he's like, oh, you know how hard it is to pull up a carrot? And he totally remembers getting in there. I think there was like 3 or 4 of them that were all trying to get this carrot. And like, that's a root vegetable, because it's so important for our kids to have these experiences, because that's the stuff they remember. He doesn't remember a worksheet we did last year, but he remembers getting his hands dirty, walking around the gardens, the smells, the feels, and all those experiences. So thank you, Chris. They had a fabulous time last year. And I know PTs are going to have an amazing time this year as well.
Good. Yes, we're very excited to be hosting everybody come through. That's one of our favorite things to do in the year.
And teachers, just a reminder though, because this is like a living, working environment. So just have those talks with your students before you get there about listening to our experts and staying on paths where you're supposed to be, because we don't want to trample or disturb any crops that we shouldn't be touching or messing with. Kids were pretty good last year, but they just need, your class. If you have a friend that needs to stand by you for the expedition, make sure that you keep them close so we can get the most out of this experience. Okay. All right, so our next lesson, these are ones you'll be doing in the class, is introducing our mentor text. We have Stone Soup, and I believe you all had copies delivered to your school today, if not yesterday. And this is a fabulous book, and I'm sure you've been through it already, but the monks come to this village and they want to help prepare some food, but no one's around to help them. So they devise a plan to make stone soup, and it slowly brings the community together. So they'll start off with kids with reading the stories to your class, but really going through and looking at the pictures, doing that think, see, think, wonder exercise, and asking them about them. Well, what do you see? What are you thinking? What do you think was happening in this picture? And also Ben's priority is trying to engage students with new vocabulary as well and getting them to use that. So you'll see here, we've got vocabulary words pulled right from the book: monk, villager, scholar, banquet, merchant, and seamstress. So there's other words, but that's just your jumping off point, right? And there's also activities you can do with that. So when the kids are really looking deeply at the pictures, encourage them and model that vocabulary to describe them as well, in addition to their other ways that they're going to describe it. Build in that and start the foundation for that vocabulary. So they're going to use this resource where they have pictures from the book and their definitions, and so there's pictures, definitions, and the new vocabulary words. So let's see who's awake. What would a scholar be? Who wants to unmute and tell us what a scholar would be? One of 3 choices up there. Nobody? Becky, do you know it?
A person, I'll do it, a person with great knowledge of a particular subject.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So that you could use that in your lessons too. When someone, starts talking about Pokemon and they're, going a little off topic, but wow, you are really a scholar when it comes to, knowledge about the Maloha region, and use that Pokemon talk back with them and they'll be so impressed. And then that modeling it will encourage them to do it as well. Okay, so this is a cutting and pasting activity where they're matching them all up. And so we've got seamstress and merchant and banquet. And seamstress is one that I find our younger kids don't really know, because it's not as we're very busy lifestyles now, and you know, people don't necessarily pull out their sewing machines or needle and threads to fix things anymore. So that's a trade that's kind of gotten lost in this within this generation that they need to learn about and hear about. And merchant, they can talk about next time they go into Washington Mall, what merchants did you see? And talk about like that. Or if you have maybe you just had a Halloween party. Did you have a banquet? Were there lots of snacks finally brought in with COVID restrictions being lifted? And talk about it that way. Oh, it's pizza day at lunch or hot lunch day. What a banquet you have here. And using it in their everyday life so it gets built in and they start using it more frequently as well. And you'll have access to all these. So I'm not going to read them all to you. You're all professionals, so you'll have access to all these if you want to go back and look at them or print them out, whatever you'd like to do. So our next lesson really works about sequencing. So we've got also you've got your WALTs and your success criteria and the codes all over here under this yellow column. So in the next activity, you're going to discuss with students about the beginning, the middle, and the end. Talk about some things that happen in Sewn Soup. What were happening in the beginning? What did you notice? What happened in the middle? How did the author write this up? And talk about the craft of writing as well. How did the author give you a satisfying ending to the story? Do you think you could make Sewn Soup? How would you do it? And I know in P3s they do how-to books, right? So I believe P2 they do that as well. So we're practicing that skill of putting things in sequential order, using the vocabulary like first, second, third, next, then, finally. And you'll have resources with this as well, so they can start making their own recipes. And then to wrap it all up, they would present it to the class. So here's another activity they can do. This one, then even if you're not making soup in the classroom, they can figure it out from the story and from their own background knowledge of what would you have to do first. Would you want to boil the water before you put the water in the pot? No, that doesn't make any sense. And kind of have those conversations where they get to be silly and enjoy it. You know, what if you had enjoy your soup right in the middle? Oh, that wouldn't make sense. It's not even, we didn't even put any vegetables in it yet. Of course, we have to put this in order and talk about what would happen if we didn't and the importance of putting them in that order. And then if this is an enrichment activity too, they could write their own instructions for their own soup. Or maybe they know how to make grilled cheese, or maybe they know how to warm up chicken nuggets, and make sure you have ketchup on the side, and putting those things in order and drawing a little picture there as well, that they can make their own recipe cards. You could even make your own recipe book for their whole class if everyone did one. And lesson 3. This is we're going to review and use that Think, See, Wonder program again. And we're going to really stop and look at the pictures about the community. We're going to go through, how do you think the monks felt when they first arrived and no one was paying any attention to them? They must have been hungry when they first got there. Do you think they felt welcomed by the community? And I enjoy this one. Hope you can see that. But you can see no one's coming to them, but someone's kind of looking from far off in the distance. How would you feel if you were on the playground and no one came over and welcomed you? How would you feel if your neighborhood, nobody really cared? You didn't feel part of it or connected. And then to go through the pictures as they progress. And what did you notice? How did the beginning differ from the end? Oh, well, in the end, the whole community came together and everyone was sharing and no one was left out. And this also brings up the point of food security. I know that school-wide, a lot of island-wide, a lot of charities are doing donations right now for Christmas hampers, and Eliza Doolittle's collecting food as well. And why do we do that? Why do we do those things? Because we know that people on the island don't have enough food. We're trying to help them. We're trying to make sure that everyone has their basic needs taken care of. Well, why is that? Well, because if they're not being met, what's going to happen? They're not going to feel connected to the community, and they're really going to be struggling. I know if I forget breakfast and I come to school, I'm a little hangry. I get a little flustered. Imagine what that must feel like, and talk about the pictures through that and making those connections. So those kids are going to make posters of kind of like a before and after, and working with a partner. So one partner could do what it looked like before they got, before when they first came to town and no one was helping. What did that look like? And then at the end, I love this picture. Everyone's sitting around the table, and look at those faces and how, now no one is concerned about food. So this is another one to go along with that lesson that you can pull up on you. Again, you'll have the access to this presentation. So if you just want to pull this slide up on your smart board, that's fine as well. Or if you want to use it as a circle time activity and asking them what they're noticing. And this is if you want more information about Think, See, Wonder, this is a resource that goes into a little more depth in explaining it. It's a great resource that Ben really loves using because it encourages students to make those careful observations. We're not just rushing through this book, we're really enjoying it and diving deep into it to make those connections. And lesson 4. Now they get to at this point, we're really talking about the science aspect of it, where we're identifying crops that we can grow here in Bermuda. And we're talking about, well, where do they get this food from? And I like to make them think about, like, what if you didn't have Marketplace? What if there was no Pronto? Because some kids with COVID, they weren't going to grocery stores. These guys are little, right? So a lot of their childhood wasn't being dragged to the grocery store, which I know my children were dragged a lot when they were young. But this is something that they really need to stop and think about. Where would you get your food from? You'd have to grow it yourself. And what things would we want to grow in Bermuda? And Chris would be better explaining this one than I would, but we know bananas grow well in Bermuda. We know tomatoes grow well in Bermuda. I don't see a ton of wheat or cornfields in Bermuda. What is the reasoning behind that? Why wouldn't you want that? And then of course they're little too. Well, I don't like tomatoes, so I don't want to grow tomatoes. And I'm certainly not eating broccoli, so I'm not eating that, but I really like corn. And we do have, fresh Bermuda corn. So maybe they're going to do that. This is their opportunity to design their own farm. So I made this resource as well. So these are 2 sheets where kids can cut out the squares and they can choose what vegetables they want on their farm. So this is for presentation purposes. I stuck them all on one, but those are separate worksheets. So this one is choose the crops you'd like to plant and cut and paste enough vegetables to put 1 in each square. So maybe they want to have half of the carrots and half broccoli. They get to choose what they would like. And then you can turn that into a math activity as well. You could do picture graphs with this. You could do on the board, you could do tally marks. Oh, how many carrots did everyone put together? And count by 5s all the way up, and you probably get to 100. Another one of those math goals. And then there's more follow-up work with how many plants were in your garden. What did you pick the most of? What did you pick the least of? And then I was on a roll making worksheets. So for enrichment as well, if that's fine, you don't have to go back, but there's also one that my farm would look like, or in my farm, and students can write up if I lived on a farm. So what would their farm look like? And then have that writing activity to go with it as well and explain why they chose those things. What was their favorite parts? And this is a Bitmoji classroom. Can you give me a thumbs up if your students have Chromebooks? Well, if you share this slide with them, then they can do this on their own. So if you wanted all the books, Stone Soup is a traditional tale, right? So there's many different versions of that book. So if they have some silent reading time, they can click and it brings you to an audio book of a different version of Stone Soup. Our version's on there as well, but then there's 3 others and they can compare and contrast. Steph, would you click on, well, go ahead, Steph, what would you like to click on? Not the books, because that'll bring us to a long story with probably a Grammarly. Yep, Grammarly always pops up there. So Steph, if you go back to the presentation, sorry, we had technical difficulties. For some reason, it wouldn't open up on my end, but Steph has been kind enough to listen to all my directions about going to slides and whatnot. So the B brings you to a game where the kids can pick either if they want to be a bee or if they want to be a butterfly, and they pick their location somewhere and they become pollinators. So they go on a little flower and they bring the bee to the flower. And when it lands on the flower, then they're pollinating it. So it buzzes for a second and then it pops up with a pumpkin. So it reinforces that idea and that the bees are helpful. They help us pollinate our crops. If we didn't have those, then we wouldn't have any fruits and vegetables. The flower brings you to a Curious George game where you're clicking on different, I believe it was apples, but it was a math activity. So it was sequential 1 to 10, and then 7 would be missing, and it would give you 3 options of which one you wanted to click on, and you would drag the 7 into the right spot. If you just slide down, Steph. Yep. This is another one where it brings you to just the facts. So if you click let's play, it's a little quiz. How many people does one American farmer feed? And it gives the kids an idea. Does one farm only feed one person, 2 people? Well, let's do. Write in the chat. What do you think? How many people do you think this farmer's feeding? 1, 12, 100? Oh, I've seen an answer down there. Oh. Yeah, they actually feed 154. All right, you want to do one more? Listen to this sentence. The wool from a sheep is made into sweaters. And then it's fact or fairy tale. So it's kind of like true or false. So is that, do they really get sweaters from sheep, from the wool from them? And then the kids pick true or false. So I was gonna ask them stuff, but yes, it's a fact. So it just gives you another game. So that gives you an idea. And there's other games about going to a farmer's market and picking out crops, but that's all things like those kids can work on independently. If another child maybe really needs help with the sequencing and it's not clicking, and you've got some high flyers that are ready for something else, they can go right to the Bitmoji classroom. All right, you can go to the next slide, please, Steph. Oh, and this is an amazing song that the Agri-Living Institute did last year. So this is to the tune of I'm Yours, but it's motivating children to get involved and plant seeds and to really like take care of our environment because it's up to them. I'll let you listen to that one on your own time. So yes, as always, there's more lesson plans that you can find on our website. Steph and Latoya do a fabulous job maintaining that, making sure all of our resources are up there. And if you want to learn more about cross-curricular units, and if you have any ideas, we'd love to hear from you. We want to hear what you liked. Do you enjoy workshops? Is this a good time for you for a workshop? Are you really, we at Ben realized in our vision, like we need more social studies in Bermuda. Like our kids are lacking in that. So that's one of the goals, that we're trying to get these expeditions to get out and see Bermuda and to learn more about our country, because our kids are missing a lot of that. And especially with the little guys, they missed field trips for so long that we really want them to be out and active. Okay, so if you have any comments, or when you go out on those expeditions, take pictures, have the waivers signed and what, because we'd love to use them, and it helps us with our donors as well to spread the word about what we're doing with Ben. Yeah, so the link is right here. Steph, could you pop that in the chat? We'd really just appreciate, I would really greatly appreciate your feedback about the workshop. And if you have any questions or concerns, would you mind please just filling that out for me? And as always, you'll receive PD hours for coming to the workshop. But we'd really like to know, like my favorite thing when I first got involved with Ben was like, oh, you're bringing me a book? How thoughtful. You're setting me up on a field trip? Wonderful. I don't have to call a bus. You're going to sort all that out. So Ben is trying to make things easier for teachers and make sure you have the resources you need. So if there's anything you would like to do, or if you'd like to be involved with Ben, please let us know. Becky, is there anything you'd like to add?
Am I on mute?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I would like to add, welcome everybody. And it's really great to see so many people from P2. And actually, we are hoping that we might have somebody from P2 consider working with us, because our P2 network teacher actually moved to the private system last year, and so we would like to recruit somebody to take on that position. So it would be wonderful to hear from anybody who's interested. The tasks that we ask you to help with are just to do presentations. So you would kind of co-present, come up with ideas with Kelly, and also share your ideas for lesson plans and help to do the curriculum development. So we're very interested in talking to any P2 teachers who might be interested. And I hope that you are all happy, and I'm really excited that we're doing P2 and P3 expeditions. I see one of my old friends from P5. Hi, Kelly. We've been doing upper primary for a long time, but this is a big this is a big expansion for us to go into the lower primary year groups. So we're really looking for expertise and and guidance from the lower primary teachers, and that's you guys. Please get involved and help us to figure out how do we make this just as powerful and enriching for the little ones as for the upper primary.
Thanks, Becky. Does anyone have any questions or concerns or feedback? I see it here. I've got that ministry. Let me put in my name, school, and grade level. Thank you. I see that all blowing up in the chat.
Yeah, there's been a few changes, haven't there? I see quite a few different people in P2, so it's good to meet you all. I have a question, and I don't know whether there's a way for people to kind of just respond en masse, but has anybody done bread baking, or the basic idea of how do you make bread, flour, yeast, water with P2s? Is that something that you would think about as an appropriate activity for that developmental stage? I'm not sure it would be actually in the curriculum. Please speak up if you have ideas on this.
I have never made bread in P2, but I'm sure it will be a wonderful activity. I do. I believe it will be an essential activity for not just the students to get involved in and explore, but to then write about. So, yeah.
I would love to do it as well. I'd love to be able to make different, I know Mrs. Cease in P6, she does these different types of shapes of rolls where you have to weave the bread or braid it and stuff like that. I think that'd be fun to do some different designs with the bread. Rolling it, just different tactile stuff. Rolling it, folding it, pretzel-like and stuff.
Build those fine motor muscles, kneading it. Absolutely.
It came up when we had the P5s at the St. George's Historical Society Mitchell House. And I don't know if you guys have been there. Mitchell House is a wonderful resource and can accommodate P2s. But they have this fabulous kitchen, and we were talking about all of the ways that early settlers survived. And it came up that when you got flour in barrels from overseas, sometimes there were weevils in the flour. We were then asking, well, how do you make bread? And it was just surprising the number of P5s who know how to make a cake, but they didn't actually know how do you make bread. So
yeah, I love getting messy. I love having kids getting in there and really, because that's the stuff they remember. That's the stuff they enjoy. And you can do a million math lessons with that. And then the writing about it afterwards. Absolutely. That's a brilliant idea. Well, that's the end of my presentation. So thank you all for coming. I greatly appreciate you taking time out of your day. I know you probably have a million other things to do. So thank you for making time for us.
Thank you.
Oh, and I saw somebody makes cookies in their class. Oh, that's awesome. Oh, yay. We look forward for you visiting too. Great.
Thank you. I enjoyed your presentation.
Yeah, I didn't talk too fast this time. I felt I was rushing myself. Thanks. Yeah, and all those resources are up on the Ben website, so you'll have access to all of them. Okay, and the Bitmoji classroom, I found that was a great motivator when I would taught P3 last year. Even the child that doesn't want to do their work, oh, that's too bad because you can go on your Chromebook when you're done. Suddenly their work was getting accomplished